It was exactly 2 years ago that Ethan Crumley shot up the Oxford High School in Oxford, Michigan. Tonight is going to be a special throwback. It's going to be somewhat of a special Throwback Thursday. Well, not really of a special. We are going to take you back to back with some cases like we talked about, because throughout the 2 years we've been focusing on the Oxford shooting, from the parents, even from the victims, and even the lawsuits So we're not going to go through all the skirmish in just 1 hour, because this is Throwback Thursday. We're going to focus on some other stories. I really want to focus in on what it's like talking about this issue, and what it's like covering this issue throughout the past 2 years, the trials and all. Basically, if you don't know, Ethan Crumley was the one that caused the shooting. One of the worst cases ever in 7 years of me doing this story. And this would be on this big chalkboard if it were to be right here. Before we get into that chalkboard, let's run you through what happened. So it was November 30th, 2021, when Ethan Crumley shot up the school, leaving 4 victims to die and some teachers wounded. But a lot wasn't done at the time. At the time of the shooting, nothing was done. Because remember, because everyone blamed the school. The school was responsible for not dealing with it, and the parents were held liable. So there was a bunch of lawsuits that would even stack the Jenga blocks. You know the Jenga blocks that you until it falls. Once you fill up that tower, once you fill up those Jenga blocks, once it falls, it all gets out of control. And it wouldn't be like a game of Tetris.
Who survived gunshot.
Let's look at the.
Well, we begin tonight with emotions running high in Oxford. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for 7 Action News at 6. I'm Carolyn Clifford.
And I'm Mike Duffy. A day of remembrance is planned for tomorrow, 2 years after the deadly mass shooting at Oxford High School.
The community will share a moment of silence honoring the memory of all who were impacted. Tate Meir, Madison Baldwin, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling were all killed in the violence. 7 other people were hurt.
7 Action News reporter Simon Shakehead shows us why, despite steps like security upgrades, families say that they haven't had the chance to begin healing with so much still unresolved.
Here in downtown Oxford, a day of remembrance is being planned for Thursday, the 2-year anniversary of the deadly Oxford High School shooting. And storefronts like these will be displaying luminaries as part of a tribute.
It haunts me for most of the month of November, coming up to it, and it's definitely a time that is harder for our family.
Nearly 2 years after losing her daughter Madison Baldwin in a deadly school shooting that claimed 4 lives and left others wounded, Nicole Beausoleil says not a day goes by that she doesn't experience anxiety and severe stress. Madison was kind, smart, and caring with a bright future. She says her murder is recalled each time new information comes out.
How much healing have you been able to do?
None. It's a never-ending nightmare and cycle. Every time we feel like we get about 5 steps ahead, we get knocked back about 10.
Referring to a recent Miller hearing that established the potential for life without parole for the shooter and a looming case against his parents, plus ongoing civil cases for accountability, Nicole says she's also felt a need to remain informed at every step.
I have to be there. It's my face to be shown that I'm there for my daughter. I'm there serving her justice. I'm there continuing to be her voice.
Attorney Wolf Mueller is among those hired by families who either lost children or have students who survived gunshot wounds.
You have to identify the mental health issues that students are going through, especially since the days of the pandemic. Our clients want and deserve answers as to why their children are never coming home again.
We've learned 40 families plan to make victim impact statements at a sentencing hearing Friday, December 8th, including Nicole and others suffering incredible grief. Families of students killed, including Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling, have have also voiced a need to stop future tragedies. Parent Andrea Jones adding Thursday's 2-year anniversary does not bring comfort.
Being in that room with those victims' families for the first time, seeing that video, hearing those words, the testimonies, it's something that you'll never forget.
I definitely am going to advocate more for mental health within the school districts, within the communities, all different aspects.
Classes are going to be canceled Thursday with a moment of silence at 12:51. Mental health support services will also be made available through the school district and nearby Resiliency Center. From Oxford, Simon Shakat, 7 Action News.
Still a long way to go for all that healing. Thank you so much, Simon.
It's like I said before, I'm not going to dedicate a whole Throwback Thursday to this special, but we are going to dedicate a special. We're probably going to dedicate a special Friday, or probably special something else. But we got a long way to go for this Throwback Thursday because I want to deal with a story that just really got to me. It's just really an issue about not standing for the flag and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in a foreign language. By the way, you saw the cowboy hat. I mean, you wear black. I mean, if you wear black, you represent the dead. That's all I gotta say here. All right, we got a lot to go on, but we might have a special on Friday. Maybe not. We may have it. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Come up next, an issue that just really baffled me. Not standing for the pledge at a school that decides to let the students say the Pledge of Allegiance in a foreign language. A foreign language. You don't believe me? Stay with us. If I had to make a section of that chalkboard to be the craziest story ever, this would be one of the craziest stories ever. Can you just imagine this case scenario? We've been talking about this. We talked about this, and he's been very focusing on someone who just spoke the Pledge of Allegiance in the foreign language. But can you just ever imagine, like, sitting down with Pledge of Allegiance on you, and you sit there like, what's going on? The teacher tells you, stand up. No, I'm not standing for the flag. Okay, then we're going to take you to the office. When in fact, the Supreme Court is more on the side of the students. I mean, back in the 1940s, you were compelled to salute the flag like this, or you could be suspended, That was years ago. And if you saw, the saluting was a little bit creepy. It's an issue that's been going on throughout the years. I mean, kids are not saying the Pledge of Allegiance, not standing for the flag. It's happened back in the 1940s. It all started. They went to the Supreme Court and said it was just a group of Jehovah's Witnesses who said they don't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't want to salute the flag. In the 1940s, you were compelled to do so, or you could be suspended. And as you can see here, sometimes the saluting was like a little bit creepy. It's like they're giving out the Hitler salute. I'm not gonna go all mumbo jumbo, going all doing the Hitler salute. I was saying, I'm gonna imply Hitler. But students have been suspended and arrested for not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, there was one from the Young Turks all about the foreign language thing. We'll show you that in just a minute. We'll talk about it in just a minute. But it's just concerns. This was 6 years ago. Let's take a look at this.
ISD senior says she was kicked out of school on Monday. A Cyfair ISD senior says she was kicked out of school on Monday for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, she is telling us today that this is something she has done for years, but it wasn't a problem until now. Janelle Bluto joins us live from the school with the details. Janelle?
has a policy saying that if you do not say the Pledge of Allegiance, you still have to stand unless you have a note from your parent. Well, this student's mother says she tried to write a note, but she was still told her daughter would not be allowed back in the school unless if she stood.
This is annotating an article.
It's her English homework that she finished Monday night. She was early. It wasn't due until Wednesday.
So basically, taking notes on an article to answer questions to it.
But now it's late.
And then the pledge came on, and they both stood. And then I didn't, and she asked me to, and I said I wouldn't. And she said, well, you're kicked out of here.
India Landry is a senior at Winford High School. On Monday, she was sent home after the Pledge of Allegiance.
I've never been to a school where I was called to come get my child and no one would talk to me about what's going on.
Her mother, Kizzy, says later the principal finally did talk to her.
I would love for my daughter to be able to exercise her rights as well.
Kizzy recorded what the principal told her.
Telling me that she can't come to my school if she won't stand for the pledge.
It's something India has done for as long as she can remember.
I don't think that the flag is what it says it's for liberty and for justice and all that. It's not obviously what's going on in America today.
It's never been a problem until now.
They were making rude comments saying this isn't the NFL, you won't do this here.
Mom says they've tried to work it out, but then the district began citing India's grades and absences.
All of a sudden you have all these issues with my child, but I'm like, if it was like this, you would have addressed this a long time ago.
Months away from graduating, India says she may only have two options: stand or get her diploma. She knows her decision.
I wouldn't stand because it goes against everything I believe in.
The district has responded saying a student will not be removed from campus for refusing to stand for the pledge and say they will address this situation internally. Now, we're only playing a portion of the recording with the mom speaking because the school has not yet confirmed the conversation with the principal. We also reached out to civil rights attorney Randall Callanet, who says this is a violation of India's First Amendment right because the school is public and therefore treated like a government. Mia?
All right, we'll see how this is resolved. Thanks so much, Janelle.
And so you see that? That would violate the First Amendment. The First Amendment doesn't say you have to stand. If you have a right to not say the Pledge of Allegiance, you have the right not to say it. But if they tell you to stand, you gotta stand. But have a special note? Come on. Why not? Why have a freaking special note to not stand for the pledge? I mean, it's one of the, like I said, it's one of the craziest stories ever. One of the craziest. After that, there was a lawsuit that happened.
To a story we first brought you back in October. It involved a Cy-Fair ISD student who sued after she was expelled for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Channel 2's Ryan Korsgaard is live downtown at the courthouse with new details on that lawsuit. Ryan.
The attorney telling us this case will go forward after a quiet protest is getting a lot of attention. High school student India Landry and her mom walk into the federal courthouse. They expect to make this trip more often as the federal civil rights lawsuit against Cy-Fair ISD and 5 of its employees goes forward. India says she really wants instead to walk across the stage at graduation.
Hopefully my diploma, that's what's most important.
India says the principal at Winford High School suspended her after India did not stand during the Pledge of Allegiance last fall. Her attorney says she started her silent protest of the pledge 6 teachers and 2 school years ago. She says it ended when she was in the principal's office last year and remained seated during the pledge.
I felt the flag doesn't represent what it stands for, liberty and justice for all, and I don't feel that's what's going on in the country today.
Her attorney calls the judge's decision allowing the case to go forward a victory for freedom of speech. He says that this is a case of racial discrimination.
The judge pointed out like 4 instances in her complaint where the school district was concerned about or talking about African Americans. They mentioned negatively people who kneeled, the NFL players who kneeled for the national anthem.
Landry says that she was expelled for 4 days until the school principal called and said she could come back and did not have to stand.
I support her 100% because, and I'm actually proud of her because a lot of people would not stand up for something like this.
By the way, we checked the school district not talking about this lawsuit. We're live downtown. Ryan Korsgaard, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
I mean, every story is crazy. Crazy. It's crazy enough to not stand for the flag. Well, it's crazy, but schools violating this right, I mean, they have lawsuits. Lawsuits will be flying in. And even this one, the scolding message to students are not taking a stand. Take a look at this, and then we're going to take a break.
That's your Rush Block, your news, traffic, and weather in 5 minutes or less. And I'm Liza Lucas here at the 11 Alive Bridge. Following this controversy online over a message from a Florida high school teacher that has gone viral. Now, that message on the whiteboard was scolding students who chose not to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. That Jacksonville teacher now removed from the classroom. Now, the message included references about slavery, women's rights, and the election of a black president, as well as the fact that the superintendent of the school board is black. Now, it reads in part, quote, "If you refuse to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance or our national anthem, are you revealing maturity and wisdom? Actually, you are displaying the opposite." Now, according to Florida law and the school board policy, students can be excused from the pledge if their parent signs off on it. So just a little note right there, but online people have been talking about this one. We've been watching messages come in from overnight. Now, Randall says that he's actually a teacher, and he always asks the students to stand and say the pledge, but they chose not to. He insists that they are respectful and stay quiet. Now, we've got another interesting perspective from Andy on our Facebook page. He said, "I was a soldier and have been deployed to war zones or visited many other countries. The teacher is correct that we're lucky to be living here. However, he says you can't force someone to stand or force a belief on them. But we should say that there are those that are very much in support of the teacher as well." Those comments coming in our page, guys.
Yeah, this happened at First Coast High School, a very popular high school, well attended in Duval County in Jacksonville. The teacher's point is absolutely correct when she says we are all fortunate to be living in America. However, when she starts to name and cite off the black administrators and the fact that the principal of First Coast High School is black, that has nothing to do with the fact that there are still so many injustices in America, and that's why people are still sitting.
Yeah, one really doesn't have to do with the other. I agree with it. You can't really make anybody, stand up and say the pledge. If they're not disrupting it,
right,
leave them alone.
Yeah, I mean, these days you've got to respect people's rights to do, whether it's the national anthem, whether it's the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, of course, Josie, you and I always talk, we're old school. We stood, you took off the hat, you did your thing. It's a different day we're living in. I mean, I agree with the soldier that, tweeted in, hey, fought the wars and this is what the country's all about. But unfortunately, a lot of folks are now using this as that platform for whatever their purpose is.
And a lot of our Morning Rush insiders are chiming in on this as well, because the teacher actually questioned and said, "You're revealing your maturity and wisdom to the students." She said, "If you choose to sit, then you're revealing how immature you are." So we want you guys to chime in on this. Do you agree with this teacher? Are there certain parts? Just use the hashtag Morning Rush ATL. And of course, we put this story on 11alive.com. All you have to do is click on our top stories.
This is just crazy enough as it is. Just freaking crazy. I mean, if you don't want to recite the pledge, don't recite the pledge. It's just common sense. When schools say you got to stand and say it, they're violating everyone's First Amendment rights, and that can be lawsuits up the ass for school districts. That's why school districts are losing a lot of money, because of these lawsuits. If you feel as a student your rights are violated because you refuse to stand for the pledge, you have the right to violate you have the right to sue your school district for not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And even if it's worse, if you say it in a foreign language. When we returned, one school district was under attack years ago because of a school district had to say, you know what, it's foreign language week, let's pick a language and recite the pledge in a foreign language. What was it? Stay with us and we'll tell you. We'll be right back. Every time I do the crazy stories on this show, it seems like the craziest story just want to rip out your hair. Like in this next issue right here. Remember years ago we talked about people not saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Well, on the season premiere back in 2021, when I changed the name to Cut Me a Break, I came across this story. It was this got me on the edge of my seat. Okay, this school district decided it's foreign language week, so it's like, okay, it's foreign language week. So, what's big language, and we're saying the Pledge of Allegiance in that language? You want to have it to be Arabic. And you, whenever you say that, everyone is like, oh my God, how could you speak Arabic in American school? It's... Watch the video.
Hey, a school in New York decided, hey, you know what? We have Foreign Language Week. So let's pick a language and let's read the Pledge of Allegiance in that language. It happened to be in Arabic, and what happened? Everybody's heads exploded. Oh my God, what are you doing? How could you speak Arabic in an American school? It's Foreign Language Week. What? So what if they had read it in Chinese? What would happen? Like, oh my God, you let them try to take over. This is New York. What's wrong with you? Oh, the Russians are going to take over if you say it in Russian? No, you're pledging allegiance. Like, for example, if they were actually Arabs, and they're not, they're kids who were learning foreign languages, and they said the American Pledge of Allegiance, wouldn't that be a good thing? We went to go liberate Iraq, didn't we? Aren't we supposed to be on their side? What a joke. You just hate Arabs. So the whole school is up in arms. The parents are up in arms. School Superintendent Joan Carbone received complaints from military and Jewish families. What the? Hey, knuckleheads, the ones in the military. You went to liberate Iraq. You went to liberate Afghanistan. They speak Arabic in Iraq. In Afghanistan, they have many different languages. In Iraq, there are other languages, but predominantly Arabic. You don't like those people. You didn't want to liberate them. You wanted to kill them. So when you come back, you're, how dare they speak Arabic? In New York, you ought to be, goddamn it, you ought to be embarrassed no matter where you are. And Jewish families, what's wrong with you? The ones that complained here. I mean, who would complain if they did it in Yiddish or Hebrew? Why would you complain? What's wrong with that? That's celebrating our diversity. Why are you complaining when they're doing it in Arabic? Why? Are you opposed to all Arabs? I mean, you're throwing yourself under the bus. You're embarrassing yourself. Look at what you're doing. So, okay, now written note got put on a car shield, on the windshield of a car for one of the people that are the administrators in the school. It said, we live in America, speak English. And what happened? They caved. They caved. You got these insane threats, and you're going to buckle to that? Of course they are. So here's Principal Aaron Hopmeyer. He says, we sincerely apologize for having the Pledge of Allegiance recited this morning in the high school in a language other than English. You think we'd have had the same trouble if they recited it in French? I don't think so. You think they would have the same trouble if they did, I mean, you name any other language. German, Spanish. Maybe in some areas of the country, if you did it in Spanish, you might get the same, wow, we're in America, you speak English here, right? That's very possible. But notice they only complain about languages that they don't like. It's really grotesque. Finally, Carbone told the paper that the gesture was something that was supposed to be good, but turned out not to be. Yeah, that's right. You were trying to do a good and decent thing, teach kids foreign languages, openness to other ideas, diversity, all these wonderful things, right? And instead, what happened? The community rose up in its anger, fear, and hatred and crushed it. You must be so proud. What a great irony that they're doing this in regards to the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America, whose whole point is supposed to be that everyone is equal.
Everyone is...
school in New York...
Everyone is equal. It's just, yeah, everyone's equal. And even the Young Turks are talking about this. I mean, they may have different opinions. I'm going to play you some portions of what they had to say. I mean, here's one from a teacher who punished a child for refusing to stand for the freaking...
refuses to stand.
Here's one that talks about a California teen who refused to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance.
A California teen refuses to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. In fact, she alleges that she stopped standing for the Pledge of Allegiance a long time ago as a Native American student because her parents taught her about her Native American history. Well, because of what's been happening with Colin Kaepernick protesting by not standing during the national anthem, all of a sudden teachers are noticing this student. Her name is Leilani Thomas, and she goes to Lower Lake High School. And apparently a teacher noticed that she wasn't standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and docked a few points from her participation grade. Now, this made headlines, and it got to the superintendent, and the superintendent has responded. But first, let me tell you what Leilani Thomas says. She, meaning the teacher, told me I was being disrespectful, and I was pretty mad. She was being disrespectful to me also, saying I was making bad choices, and I don't have the choice to sit during the pledge. Now, the superintendent weighed in on this and said, no. She has all the right in the world to not stand during the Pledge of Allegiance. She has the right to, protest it or make whatever political statement she feels is appropriate, which I agree with. But what's interesting is how much our schools go out of their way to ensure that kids don't question authority and don't think for themselves. Don't be a critical thinker, because if you offend anyone or if you're considered disrespectful, then we're going to cut a few points from your grade.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ironies here. First of all, we're really talking about disrespectful. You're saying a Native American must pledge allegiance to the American flag. I mean, you're in a school. Have you read any history? Like, look, I love the country, and I want to there's been great parts of the country, terrible parts of our history, and I'd like to get beyond all that, and so I love America, and I stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. But if a Native American says, hey, given what's happened, I'd rather sit this one out, I get it. I mean, if you don't get that, you got an issue. And so, in fact, I'd find it a little disrespectful to say, no! Remember that flag that rode, roughshod over your ancestors and killed them and butchered them and then reneged on every deal we ever made with them? Make sure you salute that flag! That's a little disrespectful. And besides which, again, the more important point is you're missing the point of the country. Look at the positive things about that flag. Is our Constitution, our ideals, and what we stand for, which is freedom. And the freedom to express yourself in any way you like, including sitting for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right, exactly. And I think the most important thing to take away from it is understanding that no progress in the country came from people refusing to challenge authority. Right? I mean, anytime you've had progress, it's because people questioned authority, they challenged authority, and they demanded better of the country and the people that represent us. We should educate young people to be like that. We shouldn't educate them to shut their mouths and follow all the orders and all the rules. I know that a lot of adults and educators want that because it makes their jobs a lot easier. I mean, that's how you discipline kids. But at the same time, when you see someone trying to make a political statement at a school, try to nurture that conversation and that dialogue. Like, I would utilize that as an opportunity to do a lesson on the Pledge of Allegiance, where it comes from, why does this Native American student feel this way? I mean, maybe that's like a hippie stance, but I think it's a good educational opportunity.
It's not a hippie stance, it's the stance of an educator where we actually talk about the issues and learn from it.
Right.
But instead, well, what are we doing? She's been sitting since second grade, but because of Kaepernick, there's a hysteria.
I know.
Like, oh my God, find out all the sitters. Who's sitting? Okay, the sitters hit the fan. Okay, so I'll make sure we go on a warpath, ironic, and go get these people.
Yeah.
Just calm down. Let her voice her opinion, in this case, by not voicing her opinion and just sitting. Become a TYT member today.
All right, that's enough of the pledges. Now let's waste some common sense. You have the right to not to stand for the flag. You have the right. If you have the right to sit, and sit, not stand, then that's your choice. If the school says no, then just follow the directions. Get a note from your parents saying, "Oh, you can't sit, you can't stand for the pledge because of this." I mean, if you had a broken ankle, if you're on a wheelchair, that would be acceptable because you were in a wheelchair. That would excuse you. But if it's because of the culture that schools say, we don't care about your culture, we don't care about your rights, you're going to stand. I mean, I go to every sports game, I go to every football game, and no one is standing for the fucking pledge. Everyone's standing for the fucking flag, but nobody is removing their fucking hats. Observe. Would everyone please rise and take off your hats as we recite the national anthem? They just go like, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light, And they never take off the fucking cap. It's out of respect. You are to take off your hat at all times. It is a sign of respect. I mean, your freedom of speech is not bought by celebrities and politicians. No, it is bought by the people who went to serve in the military, who fought for this country. The real heroes of our country are soldiers. They're bought by you and me. We buy freedom. Freedom is free from the soldiers. I love my country. I love America. And I love Texas. I am proud to be a damn Texan. It's not cool to be not standing for the flag. I can say this. Not standing for the flag, not standing to the Pledge of Allegiance in school is not cool unless for cultural references. Even how about a student who was arrested for freaking not standing? I mean, you could be arrested. That would be a violation of your First Amendment rights. I mean, even if, just again, common sense would say just follow the Constitution. We're all human beings. We're all American. We gotta try to follow the rules here. And rules is something that I love. But even then, we still gotta understand that everything you do comes with a price. And if you're not gonna follow the rules, then there's consequences. That's what raises common sense. And also what sets off our common sense alerts. So I'm glad that I had to put that in there. Alright, come up. Last season we showed you a story. Actually, yeah, coming up I showed you my reaction to a story about a witch hunt that happened. You'll see what happened. You'll see what happened in Washington, Wenatchee, Washington, where a sex ring happened, and everybody was all the witnesses. It was all in court, even foster parents. John Larson has a story. Stay with us. I believe last season I showed you this story, but we did not raise some common sense about whether who should live or who should die. It should be the choice of yourself. But the question is, what if your loved one had to decide for you because you can't speak after you got into a terrible accident? Well, the story you're about to see could really change your life for your loved one. Here's John Larson.
Can you shake my hand?
You ever had a dream, a nightmare where you couldn't move, you couldn't talk, you couldn't scream?
Mm-hmm.
We've all had the nightmare.
Yeah.
And he's living it right now.
Yes, he is.
He's in the nightmare.
He is.
Somewhere behind these eyes, Robert Wendland lived. Paralyzed, unable to communicate, he was trapped. While the people around him wondered, was Robert fighting to stay alive?
I believe in my heart that he would want to live to see his children grow up.
Or yearning to die?
How would you feel being shut in a cage, screaming for help, and there's no one to answer?
The story of Robert Wendland is either one of hope or horror. It is a story of what happens when a man fails to write down his last wishes, and then must silently witness while others decide if his life is worth living. Robert and Rose had been married for almost 15 years and had 3 children, Katie, Carrie, and Robbie.
He was great with the kids. I mean, he loved his children. His children were his life.
At 40 years old, Robert was strong, handsome. He worked hard, selling engines for boats and trucks, and played hard. Robert was a heavy drinker. His descent into darkness began one night in September, 3 years ago. He was driving home in his pickup truck around 10 p.m. when he steered up a ramp to get on the interstate and lost control. The truck skidded off the shoulder and rolled end over end. Robert was thrown from the truck. Police tested his blood for alcohol. It was more than twice the legal limit.
When I saw him, he had a bolt in his head, and his head was real swollen, and he had tubes everywhere, and he was real dirty.
Robert's wife, Rose, learned that Robert's brain had twisted in his skull and was seriously damaged. Robert was in a coma.
I was scared. I didn't know if he was going to get better at that point. I just knew that I had to try.
In the first few days after the accident, a respirator kept Robert breathing.
After about 4 days, they took him off the respirator, and he just kind of like flatlined right away. And that scared me. And they asked me at that time, do they want for me to put him back on? And I was like, yes. You know, give him more time. It's just going to take more time.
Doctors waited several hours, and as they tried to remove the respirator one more time, Rose prayed.
God, I said, we're going to try one more time, and if it lasts, that is a sign. That is a sign that we're going to keep trying. If it doesn't make it, then we'll just let him go. You know, but if it makes it, that's a sign.
And
he made it.
Robert was alive, but unconscious, unresponsive. He was beginning a struggle for survival that would surprise doctors, challenge lawyers, and bitterly divide his family. In the weeks after his accident, it appeared Robert was fighting hard to live. His body twitched, his fingers moved.
They were small signs of life.
Yes.
And you thought, he's coming out of it.
Yes.
At roughly the 6-week point, Robert came out of his coma. But strangely, he did not wake up. His eyes were open, but he was not conscious. Doctors told Rose, give him 6 months to a year to show any further signs of progress. So Rose and her children waited, visiting Robert twice a day.
I just knew I had to try because we had a wife and 3 kids, and I can't let it go.
Robert knew what it was like to grow up without a father. The oldest of 7 children, his mother Florence raised them alone. Their 3 different fathers all absent. Family life was not easy, and alcohol made things worse. Michael Hofer is Robert's younger half-brother, and as adults, his closest sibling.
Right after the accident, you were hopeful that he might recover?
Oh yeah, talk to Rose. I says, you know, he's going to be okay. Give him a little time. Let him come out of the coma.
Even though doctors had offered slim hope, in January 1995, 16 months after the accident, Robert took another step towards consciousness.
Can you shake my hand?
For the first time, he showed signs of awareness. He'd move his hand or lift his leg when asked. But still, he could not talk, walk, or eat on his own. Rose and Michael kept a devoted watch at Robert's side.
Mike went just about every day for the longest time helping me. Can you shake my hand? Stretch his arms and legs so that, well, to me, I thought when he came out of it, he'd be able to just get up and walk.
Move your hand up and down.
But Robert's improvements were frustratingly subtle. He was stuck in a bizarre limbo, not in a coma, but not fully aware either. A medical gray area doctors do not completely understand.
Can Robert speak?
No.
Can he feed himself?
No.
Is there anything there that reminds you of Robert?
Not at all.
In July of 1995, almost 2 years after the accident, the feeding tube, which doctors had surgically implanted in Robert's stomach to keep him alive, mysteriously came out. It was the 4th time it had happened, and it made Rose wonder. After all he had been through, had Robert deliberately pulled the tube out himself? Was he asking to die?
When Robert pulled out the feeding tube for the 4th time, or the feeding tube came out, or however you want to, it's gone. It was Katie and Carrie's decision to sit down with me and said, Mom, you're not going to do this again. You're not going to put Dad through this again. They were the ones that brought it up. And then they asked me, don't do it.
Rose, the children, and Michael had reluctantly arrived at an agonizing fork in the road. The prognosis for Robert was grim. Should he be kept alive, likely trapped in this vague, semi-conscious state for the rest of his life? Or should his feeding tube be removed, allowing Robert to die? Finally, Rose was ready to accept what she says she knew all along. Robert would want to die.
How hard was that?
Oh, it was devastating. Yeah. It's hard.
But Rose was amazed at what happened next.
I received an anonymous phone call.
Deborah Hofer is one of Robert's half-sisters.
And the person on the phone told me in a very urgent voice that I needed to call Robert's doctor to find out what they were going to do with him.
She did. And then Deborah told her mother Florence and sister Rebecca in 2 days Robert would be moved to a convalescent hospital where they would take away his feeding tube and he would die.
The doctor said we planned to move him and pull his food and water.
And I told them over my dead body.
Should Robert Wendland...
Told them over my dead body.
Over my... What a cruel statement to say. But would that feeding tube ever come out? Should he live or should he die? When we come back to the conclusion of the story, stay with us. Return now to our story. You've heard the dramatic story about Robert on the last season of our show. You've actually seen you've actually seen it. But for Throwback Thursday purposes, this would be it. So far, what you've heard is from his family members, the wife, and the other family, and and Florence. But the question remains on everyone's shoulders: should Robert be allowed to live or die? Remember this: the feeding tube that connects to him is the only thing that keep him alive. If that thing is pulled, he could die. So who should make that decision? Him or the family? You're about to see a remarkable tape of what could happen when they try to test out Robert's motor skills. Once again, here's John Larson.
When Robert's mother and 2 of his sisters heard of Rose's plan to withdraw Robert's feeding tube, they got busy making a case that Robert would want to live. They hired a lawyer and got a court order to keep Robert's feeding tube connected and alerted the media.
The Robert that I grew up with, that I knew, was a very stubborn, mule-headed person.
A fighter.
Yeah,
He would go down fighting. He would not.
Despite the doctor's bleak prognosis that Robert would never significantly get better, his mother, Florence, and his half-sisters, Rebecca Vinson and Deborah Hofer, told reporters that 22 months after the accident, Robert was finally getting better, and it was wrong to let him die.
They want to do something like this suddenly. They don't want to give us time to adjust. They don't want to give him time to do what he can do.
In our special segment 4 tonight, the story of life and death.
And then the sisters landed what appeared to be a knockout blow.
Okay, Robert.
A videotape made by Robert's therapists, without Rose's knowledge, was aired on local television and suggested Robert was making real progress.
Okay, Robert, grab the cup.
Robert grabbing a cup.
There you go. The red
Distinguishing
pen,
between colors.
grab the red peg. Good. Excellent.
Wiping his mouth with a towel.
Here, wipe your mouth.
And grasping a bean bag.
Grab this bean bag, Robert. Right here. It's a blue bag. Good.
It seemed to be compelling evidence that Robert, regardless of what the doctors and his wife were saying, was improving.
The effect of that tape is very clear. It looks as though he understands commands. He can tell the difference between colors. That he is there. Maybe in a diminished capacity, but he's there.
But we know better. I know that it's been over a year later, and he can't even do the same things that he did back then.
Rose says, watch the portions of the videotape not aired on TV. Portions, she says, show all the times Robert was unable to respond.
Grab the ball, Robert. Grab the ball. Here, Robert. Grab the ball.
No matter how long it took.
Here's a cup and the spoon. Take the spoon, Robert. Take the spoon. Let you roll.
10 seconds.
Robert. Cup and a spoon.
20 seconds.
Take the spoon. Robert, take the spoon.
30 seconds.
Let's just see what he does next.
40 seconds.
Okay, that's all right.
And he still didn't get it right. Look at how much help Robert needed to accomplish the smallest tasks.
Right here, Robert. Hand it to me. Reach. Reach. Oh, you don't want to hand it to me. Here.
And how little of what he was doing he actually understood.
Touch your nose, Robert.
If you ask me, did he with help, did he grab it? Yeah, he did. Does he know what he's doing? I don't think so.
You say that the videotape shows that he can understand.
Oh, yes. When you tell him simple verbal commands, he will follow through. He can think and follow through with it physically.
More than a year and a half after the videotape was made, Robert's fate is still embroiled in a swirl of legal maneuvering. Doctors, lawyers, judges, and therapists all have opinions on what would be best for Robert. The only one who can't voice his opinion is Robert.
Can Robert in any way tell you what he wants?
No.
Can he tell you, I want to die now?
No.
Do you ever ask him?
I've asked him, Robert, show me a sign that you're there. Blink twice, or move your hand, or do this, or show me that you're there. Show me some kind of sign that you're there. And there's nothing.
No response.
No response.
Not a blink.
Not a blink. Nothing.
But Florence, Rebecca, and Deborah tell a different story. They say that Robert's mood brightens when he sees them, an indication of his will to live.
All of a sudden, he just picked my hand up like this and put it like that. I says, Robert, I says, do you realize what you've done? And he picked it up and done it again. I says, Robert, I says, you kissed my hand.
Do you have any doubts that he wants to live?
I have no doubts whatsoever.
Now, what makes you so sure that he wants to die?
If you knew Robert, you know how strong he was. He always wanted to be the provider, you know, and the strong one, and take care of us, and be a husband, be a father. And if he can't do any of those things, you know, he didn't see any point, you know, and just being, existing.
His sisters say if you knew Robert, you'd know he was a fighter. He was stubborn. He was strong. He wouldn't give up no matter what.
I don't know what to say about that, because he really didn't have too much, you know, he didn't discuss many things with his sisters. They weren't very close. They don't even know him.
In fact, Rose says, Robert deliberately had not seen or spoken to his mother and sisters for 5 years prior to his accident, that his children barely know their grandmother or aunts. Robert's brother Michael concurs.
He wouldn't even talk to him. There was no communication there at all.
While Florence and the sisters say they had seen Robert within the last 5 years, none of the family members wanted to say what happened to sever ties. But Rose and Michael maintain that they know best what Robert wanted, because he told them only a week before the accident he would not want to be kept alive in a situation like this.
We had been drinking the night before, and I says, Robert, one of these days I'm going to get a call that you either been in an accident, you got killed, or you killed someone, or I says, you're going to be maimed for the rest of your life, laying in a hospital bed, you know. And he says, Mike, if that ever happens, just promise me that you won't let that happen.
What were his exact words?
Mike, don't let them do this to me.
Rose says she heard Michael's discussion with Robert.
And this isn't just a story that you've made up. He actually said this.
Yeah, in front of his 2 children and myself and Mike.
Very clear in your
Very
mind
clear.
that he does not want to live.
Rose says that even though she barely makes ends meet on the $24,000 a year she makes providing daycare, she rejects suggestions by the sister's lawyer that a $165,000 life insurance policy on Robert is in any way influencing her decision. No one, not even the doctors hired by the opposing sides of the family, can say for certain what patients like Robert are thinking, and they disagree what should be done. Dr. Vincent Fortunes was hired by Florence and Robert's sisters.
We always have to be guided by the principle of do no harm, or in Latin we say primum non nocere, do no harm. And by turning off food and fluid on an individual like this, we would definitely be doing harm.
Dr. Ronald Cranford was hired by Rose for his opinion.
It's the quality of life that counts, not preservation of life. To be severely brain damaged and aware of your condition
Head up, Robert.
is worse, far worse, than being in a vegetative state.
If Robert's feeding tube is withdrawn, he will die within 10 to 30 days. It is possible, trapped inside his mind. Robert understands this. Behind these eyes, does Robert fear death? Or does he long for it?
He's in a hell that he can never get out of. How would you feel being shut in a cage, screaming for help, and there's no one to answer?
Rose says she can live with the decision to let Robert die. It's the decision to keep him alive that haunts her.
I feel no guilt at all to allow Robert to have his wish. In fact, that's the only gift I'll ever give Robert. That's all I can give him.
No trial date has yet been set for the court case that will eventually decide whether Robert Wendland lives or dies. The case is believed to be the first of its kind in California, and as such, there's no clear legal precedent. Experts say the judge's decision will be guided by three things: the closeness of the family.
It's the closeness. We never will know. But if your family was in this situation, you wouldn't be going to the court system to decide this. It's between the family. The family has to decide, not the court system, the family. Even if you have to go to family court, you may have to. But after watching this story, I still just can't believe that something like this would happen. To where it would be up to a judge to decide. But we don't know. We probably won't ever know. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to plan to show you this story tonight, but I had a little change of plans here. But here's a preview of this story you'll be seeing next week, on next Thursday.
To what he was saying, I would be in prison probably the rest of my life.
Is it a town's shameful secret? One of the worst sex crimes ever? Or a modern-day witch hunt?
Are you at all concerned that, yes, children have been abused, but maybe in the frenzy, innocent people are being charged?
John Morrison with a Dateline investigation.
Also coming up on Friday, more than 1 year anniversary at Oxford High. Even more from the family. Now, here's a story of what you might see. Coming up this week. Coming up on Friday. The story of putting cameras in your home and having a wife looking at you. You might end up seeing that. And 2 weeks from Thursday, on Throwback Thursday story about sexual harassment in the workplace. You saw my reaction. Now you'll see the story. Here's a sneak preview.
Thanks very much. Coming up on today,
A heavy hit tonight as a Unit 5 investigation into allegations of sexual harassment.
Here's a preview.
Now, good evening. It was a weekend of deadly tornadoes.
Sexual harassment at one of the giants of corporate America.
I didn't want the people to see my husband and tell him what happened here.
What could the women do to stop it?
That's in 2 weeks from Thursday. That's it for Throwback Thursday. We'll see you next week for Throwback Thursday with the witch hunt. And then in 2 weeks, the Ford sexual harassment scandal. And I'll see you again for Give Me a Break Friday. For all of us here at YouTube, and Give Me a Break. Oh, and I sure mentioned, 2 weeks from Friday is going to be a very special, all about how to be safe. So right before we leave, we're going to give you a sneak preview. Let's give you a preview of that story. Because it is worth watching to help protect yourself, the ones you love, and your children. Take a look.
Humanity from an alien invader and has the kryptonite to do it. The president, the brilliant one, and the son. A reckless youth starting prime time. How to be safe in America. Now from Washington, D.C., Sam Donaldson.
Good evening. Tonight, at a time when the whole country is worried about violent crime, we are devoting our entire program to what you, your family, and your community can do to be safe. This is the Police Communications Center in Washington, D.C., the murder capital, as well as the national capital of the United States. There have been 406 murders here so far this year. Whether you live here or somewhere else, the number one topic these days is how to avoid becoming a crime victim. That is the theme of our program tonight. What you can do right now to be safe in America. Diane?
That's coming up. That's coming up next Friday. Have a good night, everyone.